the concept of earning, of giving your time and talent for some reward starts very young. As we get older, and particularly as children start to become more independent, money becomes more important to them. For young children, they don't understand the difference between a dime, a nickel, a penny, and a quarter other than size. So yeah, the quarter works out really well, but they'd rather have the nickel than the dime. And so being able to understand that developmentally, they have to be able to get that symbol of what money is before they can start to then think about saving money as a concept.
Teaching children about earning, spending, sharing, borrowing, and saving helps them learn about the ways their time, money, and talents are valued. In fact, money helps children to understand symbols, value, and the nature of resources. Because children experience the world in different ways than adults, two K-State research and extension specialists say the resources of time and talent and the notion of money are concepts that are both difficult to grasp and explain. On today's Sound Living, helping children understand the concepts of time, money, and talent. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. K-State Research and Extension Family Resource Management Specialist Elizabeth Kish and Child Development Specialist Bradford Wiles have co-authored the publication Through a Child's Eyes, helping children understand the concepts of time, money, and talent. According to Wiles, the publication provides strategies and activities for adults with young children to help their children understand these concepts. Bradford, sometimes as adults we feel like we don't know all there is to know about money and finances, but when it comes to children, it's never too early, really, to start teaching them these concepts. And that's really what they are, is concepts.
Yeah, right. So we think about money as sort of it's a symbol, right? It's a symbol for time, talent, effort, investment. We use symbols in early childhood all the time. Language, those are symbols. We know that the word ball is a symbol for the physical thing. And so one of the things that we know, particularly in United States culture, is that talking about money can be somewhat taboo for families. Oftentimes, there's no conversation between and among the adults in the family. And so then even the notion of extending to children can be difficult. So it is really good for the whole family to really be intentional about thinking about and talking about money.
And these are just casual conversations. These are just bringing it up and talking about it, not making it taboo.
Yeah. So part of it is just establishing a family culture of understanding that money is a reality. It's part of our lives. That while there will always be disagreements about that, we know that the number one thing that families have disagreements over is money. There are opportunities to teach and learn about money, and beyond that, resources, time, and talent are also components of family resources. And so helping children learn anything starts with modeling what you want them to learn as adults, as parents, as grandparents, as adults in children's lives. Children are always learning from adults about what it means to be a person. So, when we think about resources and money, it's important to be able to model that sort of behavior, right? And we break it down into spending and saving and giving. And then there are other components within those things that are really important, and particularly where my colleague Elizabeth really brings her expertise.
And honesty is important here because you're trying to let them know really how things are financially. Sometimes the easy thing to say is, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. And then all of a sudden, they may get the idea that we have no money.
Yeah, right. And that can be very difficult, particularly for children. They don't quite understand poverty. They don't understand what we can't afford it as a means for saying no really is. It is okay to deny a child a want without resorting to we can't afford it. We can express that this is not a priority for us. So being able to articulate not just that it's not in your budget, but why it's not in your budget, that is not something that is beneficial in the moment, or that we have to sacrifice something for that, which is what saving is all about. That's not to say that you can't buy things spontaneously, but it's really about explaining and working with children to help them understand that it's not that you're poor unless you are, but that you manage your money with your long-term priorities.
What we want to show them is the earning concept, the fact that you do something in order to get this money.
Absolutely. We start out doing this fairly young in most households, right? There are some household responsibilities, and then typically children will get some reward for it. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's time with their friends. It can be things other than money, but the concept of earning, of giving your time and talent for some reward starts very young. As we get older, and particularly as children start to become more independent, money becomes more important to them. For young children, they don't understand the difference between a dime, a nickel, a penny, and a quarter other than size. So yeah, the quarter works out really well, but they'd rather have the nickel than the dime. And so being able to understand that developmentally, they have to be able to get that symbol of what money is before they can start to then think about saving money as a concept. But they understand talent and receiving something for their contributions much earlier than they understand the actual concept of money.
You talked about the spending. That kind of comes into play here, too. Are we letting them make decisions in terms of spending? How does the spending really work?
Yeah, so, in my field, we always talk about being developmentally appropriate. And what that really means is it within the realm of something that is challenging enough for children to understand without being so easy, or not being so difficult that they just give up and can't? So when it comes to spending, it's really about having the conversation about what children's long-term goals are. What are their goals? If a child, let's just take like a 7-year-old, is saving for a scooter, there are specific tasks, there are allowances, there are chores, these kinds of things that provide the child with an opportunity to think about what they want to do with their money. So if the child wants to save for a scooter, then it's incumbent upon parents, it's up to us to say, hey, yeah, I know you like that bright, shiny object at the grocery store, and yes, you could buy that, but then you're not going to be able to get this scooter. And so really talking through and thinking through what delayed gratification means and the extent to which that is actually rewarding at some point. And that is a hard concept for children and many adults. So it is sort of this element of, again, creating a family culture of recognizing that spending is predicated on what your long-term goals are.
I always kind of hesitated to buy people gift cards and things like that because I knew that they were going to have to take their children out to the store and watch them walk up and down every aisle trying to figure out how to spend the money. But now as I think about it, it's really not a bad idea because they do know that there's this limited amount on this card. They can't go over that. And if the parents stick to it, it can be a real learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only can children think through and make decisions about, what works best for them, how close they can get to the limit of that card. They might be able to negotiate with parents about some overage, some matching, or, how does this work? So you can think about all the concepts that go into just that simple example of receiving a gift card for, let's say, a birthday, and thinking about, okay, so they have a budget limit. They need to make a decision. They also can break that gift card into multiple different purchases, right? If it's a $25 card, let's just say, they can make five $5 purchases or one $25 purchase. Can they make a $26 purchase? That depends on what the rules are, and that's up to parents to establish, or, whenever I say parents, primary caregivers, whoever that may be. And those are important concepts because in some cases in our lives, you have a budget you cannot go over. In other cases, there's some flexibility. So these are the ways that we teach children, and by the way, learn from children about how we ourselves can go through this process and negotiate and think through, oh yeah, I too got a gift card. What's acceptable for me to go over? Is it acceptable? Is it okay to leave $1 on it? What does that mean? And so that's really beneficial when we think about child development, of really thinking through these things.
Another important concept is sharing along with borrowing and lending because those are similar, but they're not the same.
They are similar, but definitely not the same. My colleague Elizabeth recently, we were co-presenting and reminded me that I had borrowed a book from her. And part of that concept is for children, when they're lending, they have to recognize that there's a possibility that they will not get this back. Also recognizing what lending can do to friendships, to relationships. Now, they can be super beneficial. It does give people pleasure to lend, and the borrower is super grateful for that act. But there, of course, can be problems that arise, but it can be a super beneficial relationship. Sharing is different in that there is the immediate expectation that whatever the object is will be returned at the end of that setting. So if we're thinking about children sharing toys, it's one thing to share toys when you're in a home. It's another thing to send that toy home with the child. So when we think about sharing, that's in a particular setting. When we think about borrowing, if the child goes home with that toy, that child has borrowed that toy. And it really needs to be a parental negotiation as well, particularly depending on age. One of the cautions that I have for young children is that many times they don't realize that their possessions have more value than they ascribe to them. So a gift from grandma to them might be very valuable to grandma, but they don't understand that. And they certainly don't understand that they might not get that back if they lend it. And so it's really up to parents to recognize what is okay, and then also to really think through, yes, these are my child's possessions, but is the child at a developmental stage, or developmental age, I should say, where they can fully comprehend what it would mean to lose it or have it be damaged, and what they would then have to say to their parents or whomever were responsible for getting those things.
Now, while it might not have been difficult for Elizabeth to remind you of the book that you had borrowed it, had it been $20 or $30 or whatever, that can be a little bit more difficult.
Absolutely. We know as adults some of the consequences of being a borrower and lender. But we know that particularly with money, it can cause a real problem with relationships. And so making sure that the expectations for borrowing and lending are in place. When do you expect money back? Is there interest that is part of that transaction? I mean, between friends, there doesn't have to be, but, it costs you money to lend money. And we all make mistakes. The book is a perfect example. That book sat on my shelf. But the thing is that Elizabeth also knew when she lent it to me that there was a possibility that she would not get it back. She knows where I live and work, so there was a strong likelihood that it would, but parents conveying that to children before they lend is really helpful for them to understand, and oftentimes they will reconsider because they don't recognize that whatever it is they're lending might not come back to them or might take a very long time to come back to them, and that's really helpful.
This is really something that never stops, is it? We're always learning about money. We're always learning about saving, sharing, all that stuff. A really good publication. Where can people find the publication?
It's on the K-State Research and Extension bookstore. If you just do a Google search for helping children understand the concepts of time, money, and talent, or even just time, money, and talent, you'll find it. It's been a real pleasure to work with Elizabeth to get the child development concepts tied into the family resource management concepts and to see those expand not only with children but across the lifespan, as you indicated, that this is something we're always learning about. We're always having interactions around money. So it's really exciting to be able to blend these two seemingly disparate concepts of time, money, and talent with child development, but they're so intimately linked across our lives.
That's K-State Research and Extension Child Development Specialist Bradford Wiles. Bradford and Extension Family Resource Management Specialist Elizabeth Kish have co-authored the publication Through a Child's Eyes, helping children understand the concepts of time, money, and talent. Again, the publication is available online through the K-State Research and Extension bookstore. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.